The Young Thug case is still rolling on. It is now, day by day, the longest running criminal trial in Georgia history. I think it's like 20 or 21 months. There's no end in sight.
Yeah.
And YSL Woody has become a bona fide internet celebrity.
He's made snitching cool, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's doing sponsored posts. He's spoken at law school.
He's
getting paid interviews. He's showing off money and iced out watches.
He changed the game,
Are you
man.
surprised this all is happening?
You know what? I feel like, to be honest, when 6ix9ine snitched on the whole gang and lived to tell the tale and came back home to millions and Richard Mills on every hand and arm, he kind of created the template that, yo, this snitching thing can kind of work out. Like, this snitching thing can actually run. And you know, I feel like as time's gone on, I feel like, you know, it's been really interesting ever since you got a guy like 1090 Jake coming on the scene, right? I think that, you know what's really funny? I feel like for a period of time, people were so obsessed with like who killed who in hip hop. But I feel like we entered this weird era where everyone was obsessed with who's telling, who's snitching, who's a snitch, who's talking. You know, 1090 Jake's had big moments exposing certain people as alleged snitches. Everyone wants to know, is he solid? Is you know, Lil Durk's got a clean sheet when it comes to the streets. This person's got some paperwork on them. People trying to put paperwork on Jake. We're sort of in the paperwork anti-snitch era of hip hop. I think people are more fascinated with who told than who got killed right now in hip hop. And look, I'll be honest with you, man. I feel like the stigma on snitching is actually declining, to be honest. People are, I'm not saying it is truly cool, because people are hating on Woody. People I'm meeting, real gangsters I'm meeting in LA, they're like, yo, this Woody guy needs to be stopped. But I think as somebody that's super civilian, you know, look, I don't condone crime. I don't condone murder. If someone kills me, I'm hoping my people snitch all over them and get them locked up. They need 80, 100 years if that happens to me. But I'm not in that lifestyle, and I understand, you know, when you're in that lifestyle, you know, you're going by a code of ethics, a code of honor. We were with some guys yesterday from the Crips, and they said something really interesting, actually. They dropped this crazy quotable where they said, we got to stop the snitching. Even the police don't snitch on each other, which I thought was a bar. You know? You got guys in the community snitching on each other. Even the police, if something goes down internally, they code of silence within themselves, and they're supposed to be the authorities. So I feel like we're in this crazy snitching era of hip-hop. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but people are living to tell the tale. I mean, damn, you think of a time, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, would Woody even be walking around out here if the circumstances were the same?
Well, here's my take. I don't think we're in a snitching era of hip hop. I think that's always been around. And now it's just getting the proper attention, because back in the day, you would just say, you know, everyone was pretending that they never snitched on anybody.
Yeah.
And since there was no social media or whatever else, they could keep running with that lie their whole lives. But now with the 1090 Jakes and the internet detectives, you know, you included, now people are digging up stuff. People are writing letters to police departments, getting footage, getting body cam, you know, videos, getting paperwork, requesting paperwork. So now you get to see it for all the world, and you start to realize that this has been happening all along, just like everywhere else. I mean, look, someone on Wall Street gets busted for insider trading. He's telling on everybody. That's just assumed. No one's going to even assume that in a white-collar crime, people are going to, you know, not tell and do their time, do 20 years and not rat everyone out. No, everyone rats each other out, and that's just the reality of it. When you speak to police officers, they'll tell you that essentially almost everyone snitches. And maybe they don't snitch right away, but after doing a few years, they say, listen, I'm tired of this. I'm going to pull out my get out of jail free card, whether it's telling on someone who's alive or dead. You know, I interviewed Terrence Gangster Williams. He was in jail for, what was it, 20 years? He finally said, okay, I'm going to close all these cold case murders and tell all my friends who are all dead right now. And he got out.
Well, that's been a really big debate in hip-hop in the last couple of years of, like, is it snitching to snitch on the dead to get yourself out the jam? And there's a few famous names that have popped up where people are like, yo, he's telling on someone, he's told on the dead, how has he got out of that situation? But, you know, something that I think really stands out to me is, like, I feel like we're almost in this era of, like, people more respect self-preservation now than they do about staying solid. It's almost like, oh, he was facing 40 years. For a long time, it felt like, oh, you took 40 years on the chin and you didn't snitch, that's respect. Whereas now it feels like, oh, you were facing 40 and you snitched and got out of it next week? Oh, respect for doing that. And I'm talking more like from a fan point of view, not necessarily from other people in the streets. I feel like fans, they see a rapper snitching and coming back out. I think civilians, they kind of respect it. It's like, bro, I would have done the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, because 99.9% of rap fans are not gangsters. You're talking about a very tiny, tiny percentage of people. Now, granted, they're prominent and people talk about them, rap about them, and you see them around and so forth, but everyone's listening to the music, going to the shows. Like, you don't go to a show and it's a bunch of gangsters at the show. It's just a bunch of kids who all would do the same thing. Now, you actually went into a whole thing about Young Thug's role in Lil Wayne's tour bus shooting.
I did, yeah. That was a while ago, yeah.
Explain exactly what happened, because it's kind of a fuzzy story.
It's been a long time since I covered that, so I might be a little bit patchy on the details. But you know, there was a big back and forth that was going on between... Man, it gets complicated because it's like you got the Lil Wayne Birdman beef that was going on, right? So Lil Wayne and Birdman weren't seeing eye to eye. There was a disputed, I think it was a $51 million dispute, you know, allegedly over money that Lil Wayne was owed, and Birdman was kind of doing business badly. And then in the midst of that, you got Young Thug's kind of coming up, becoming this new artist. He was getting very close to Birdman. They had kind of like the little rich gang era, you know, Thug and Birdman were kind of coming together. For a minute, it almost seemed like Thug was like coming to take Wayne's spot. And then things really blew up when, you know, Thug came out. Obviously, for the longest time, it was meant to be, was it the Carter 4 or the Carter 5? I think it was the Carter 10, the Carter 5 was coming. Obviously, Lil Wayne's album series is called the Carter. And then, you know, Young Thug announced that he was going to be dropping his album, the Carter 6.
Well, the barter.
Well, he was good. Originally, it was, I'm dropping the Carter. That's what I heard. And then obviously legal differences of opinion go back and forth. Then he had to change it to Barter 6, right?
Right.
Obviously, it's the blood connotation. He swapped the B for a C, removed the. I guess copyright-wise, Barter 6 was going to run. But I think there was a certain feeling of disrespect for what he was doing. You know, I know that they went back and forth. There was a lot going on. And then eventually, you know, the tour bus shooting goes down, which was, what's the guy's name? Roscoe, was it PeeWee Rosco that was involved in the shooting?
PeeWee Rosco.
PeeWee Rosco, yeah. You know, that was a crazy situation. Fortunately, nobody was hurt. I mean, Lil Wayne's one of my favorite rappers of all time, so even just to think that Thug and Birdman and this little crew of people were all setting up this thing for Wayne to get shot at, it's actually insane, really looking back at it now.
I don't think that... I seriously doubt that Birdman had his hands in that.
Well, there was also another situation where
that sounds crazy. I mean, that's really like he raised this kid. Like, you know what I'm saying?
So this is just pure speculation on my part, but yeah. I don't feel like Birdman was setting it up. I feel like there was a lot of tension with all these young guys, and maybe Birdman was, you know, from what I understand, there were phone calls that were made to Birdman that night. But if I had to guess, I would think Birdman's trying to mediate and trying to calm all these young bulls down in what's going on. But I also think there was a situation where I think PeeWee Rosco had tried to get in the club. Wayne was performing. This was after a performance with Wayne. There was kind of maybe some kind of altercation, some disrespect. And then afterwards on the highway, you know, there's another theory that Roscoe was just completely on a mission of his own. He'd been disrespected and, you know, let off shots. And, you know, they're all on the phone about it, like what's going on, what's happened. But that was quite a while ago that happened. But that's now getting brought into the YSL trial. And to be honest, what it really does is just paints a picture of Young Thug kind of out of control at these early stages of his career when he's first getting on with the gang stuff. Because obviously, the big part of the case that's going on is the murder of this gentleman, Big Nut, from the kind of YFN camp. But the most bizarre thing is that these guys were all cool. There was a famous vlog where you've got Thug, Nut, and Birdman all together, and they're all hanging out. Thug's saying, yo, I'm with Nut. This is the biggest blood in America. And, you know, I was just saying to somebody the other day, what's not clear to me from this YSL trial is the motive. Because for one minute, Thug and Nut and Birdman, they're all hanging out together and they're good. The next minute, you're hearing Thug paid for a rental car that was used to murder Big Nut. And then, you know, Lucci and Thug are then beefing for years. You know, Thug's crew are spray painting slat on Nut's headstone. You know, I don't know if you saw that happened, but there was a whole bunch of disrespect. But to me, I never really got to the bottom of, like, what was the real motive behind this? You know, I've heard different rumors that there was maybe some drug dealing going on between these guys and somebody had run off with something. But, you know, for me, the thing that's a real question mark on it is the motive. And it's still unclear to me exactly why these guys actually got deadly with it at that point in time when they were all so friendly before. But again, you know, the streets is not necessarily all to be found out and decoded. But without a motive, you know, it makes me wonder whether Thug's going to beat this thing, because it's just, if all they've got as far as that murder is, you know, he rented the car that the murder allegedly happened in, and that might not be enough.
Yeah, I know the motive, but I'm not going to say it on camera.
Okay. Top secret.
Yeah, because I don't want to implicate myself in this whole trial. But yeah, I know behind the scenes what was happening. And ultimately, yeah, I mean, this trial's been going on forever. Woody's kind of an interesting sort of oddball figure in this, because a lot of the reason why Young Thug is on trial is because of Woody. And all the times that he met with police and said that Young Thug is the reason behind the shooting and all this type of stuff. And now he's on the stand trying to say that he was lying or whatever else.
I got a theory about that. I don't know if you... So obviously there was a big scandal in the trial when it came to... There was supposedly like, what, a secret meeting where Woody and the judge...
Yeah.
There was a conversation that happened, right?
Because the judge was removed after that.
Yeah, that was a huge controversy, right? You know, I'd be curious to know your thoughts on this, because what it seemed like to me is that he had gone to the judge for a private meeting and things were discussed there that shouldn't have been discussed. And, you know, there was a rumor that he'd gone to the meeting and said he was the one that killed Nut. Is that right? Not
sure. It was sort of implied, but not exactly. It's a weird situation.
So from what I understand, where the beef with the judge came in, right? Because the judge put Brian Steele, sentenced him to like weekends in jail or something, right?
Yeah, he got thrown out.
Yeah, that's wild. But from what I understood, he was trying to get him to basically say how he knew that private meeting had taken place with Woody, and he refused. Now, why do you think that is?
Well, maybe he wanted to use that person as a source later on.
Okay.
And if he went and told the source, then that's it. And obviously the stakes are very high. I mean, think about it. If Young Thug catches all these charges, that's life in prison. Is there a death penalty in Georgia? Yes.
Wow.
Georgia does have the death penalty.
Well, here's my theory, right? So the judge wanted to know how Brian Steele and that crew had gotten the information about this secret meeting with Woody. Now, Woody's supposed to be snitching on Thug, right?
Yeah.
So he's supposed to be on the opposing side of things. How did they know that the meeting happened? Now, my theory is that...
Woody's told him?
My theory is that Woody... No, listen, here we go, here we go. My theory is that Woody and Thug were kind of maybe in cahoots. It's just a theory, okay? But on purpose, with Woody to present himself as a witness, he's going to blow the whole case open. But then when it came to it and actually came to the stand, he suddenly becomes a very unreliable narrator. His stories are getting mixed up. He doesn't want to say certain things on the stand. Now, I thought what's really going on is they're trying to recreate like the King Von situation. If you remember when King Von had his case with Big Mike supposedly turned around and said, yeah, I'm going to snitch on Von. I'm going to turn him in. I'm going to say that he did this. You know, Von was the one that fired the fatal shots. So they say, okay, well, we've got this guy that's meant to be turning on Von. We're going to put Von away for the trial. Then when it comes to the trial, Big Mike turned around and said, I don't want to snitch. I ain't saying nothing on Von, right? So the case against Von completely collapses. Meanwhile, Big Mike kind of plays himself. That happened seemingly by accident, but the end result was Von got off completely scot-free because the state lost their main witness, their main snitch. I was wondering whether Thug and Woody were in cahoots trying to recreate something like this, where the state are putting everything. We got Woody, he's going to snitch. We've got all of this resources we're going to put behind Woody, and then Woody suddenly miraculously crumbles when he gets to the stand. And then obviously, you know, how do you know about this secret meeting? My theory was that the judge was going so hard at Brian Steele because he had kind of clocked, you're trying to do a little hooky thing where you're actually on the same side, and this snitch ain't really for the prosecution. That's just my theory, but knowing what I know about the King Von case, I thought, it seems like they're trying to do that. You know, imagine the star witness just completely crumbles at the last minute and Thug gets to go. It's a theory.